I'm Chris McAlilly.
And I'm Katie Heckle.
And we are the Co-op. And this summer we're doing a Bible reading plan on identity and calling. And each week we're taking a different segment of the conversation. Today we're talking about partnering with God's work. Sometimes when we're in this conversation about calling, people will get worked up about maybe, I don't think this is for me. I'm not called to be a pastor or missionary or to go out as an evangelist. That's not who I am. And that is not exactly what we're talking about. One of the beautiful things about the story of work in the Bible is that God cares about what you do, regardless of what it is that you do. And one of the things I love about the church is it is the coming together Sunday by Sunday of people from every generation and every sector. We have lawyers, doctors, educators, social workers, counselors and therapists, people that are doing creative work in the world, people that are doing entrepreneurial work in the world, civic and political work. All of those people come together on a Sunday morning, and we bless one another, we bless God, and then we're sent back out into the world to do our work, whatever that work is. And today we're just talking about thinking about whatever it is that you do as sacred work. Sometimes that distinction just doesn't need to be there. How do you think about that, Katie?
Yeah, I think at times we try to box our spiritual world up. We kind of like draw a line between this is my spiritual walk with the Lord. On Sundays, I go to church. Maybe on Wednesdays, I'm in a Bible study. And it's over here. It lives in this place over here. And then the rest of my life is over here. Almost like, like a pie that's divided up. And you kind of see your life in that way. But I think it's important to not necessarily see partnering with the Lord or this life as a pie, to maybe see it like a wheel, and at the hub of the wheel, at the center, is following Jesus, loving the Lord with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then loving people. And then how we do that flows from that hub of the wheel. So every little piece of us is attached to that center. And I think when you look at it like that, then you see, there's not my Sunday work. I'm not splitting this up. How I interact with people, how I, drive down the road, how I show up, in the grocery store, or for my job, or for my work, or with my family. It is connected to the piece of me belonging to the Lord and loving God. And that's a little intimidating, Chris, because I at times don't always reflect the Lord the way that I would want to. I recognize that I have brokenness, and one day the Lord is going to make it right, and we're going to be whole, and everything's going to work the way it's supposed to work. But until then, I'm working with a bit of a broken system, and so I just need to at times to remember that, and kind of always come back to, like a hub of the wheel, the central part of me is that Jesus is at the center. So that means, like this verse in Colossians says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sentiment. And one of the things I think about is that if you read the Bible, one of the ways when I teach the Bible to kids or youth or college students or adults, I'm always thinking about what's a framework of God's story that we can take with us and we can live within. And so I often teach the Bible as a 5-act play. So it begins with God in creation. God creates everything, and it's good, and it's very good, and there's communion, and there's paradise, and everything is in its proper place, and everything works well, and it's a lovely, wonderful reality. And then that begins to unravel and break down, and there's sin, and there's brokenness, and there's evil and injustice, and all the violence and all the things that you don't like about the world. Those things are also real. And then God spends the rest of the Bible trying to repair, restore, renew. And so that starts by God calling a people called Israel. And he delivers them from Egypt and slavery, leads them into the promised land, gives them both a way to worship and a way to live. And they're to do that in the promised land, and they do it well and poorly. And in the fullness of time, Jesus comes, the Word made flesh, to make God's purposes completely plain in the world. And then at the end of all things, as Katie's saying, everything, all of the work that was started in Jesus to renew and repair and to heal a broken creation will one day be made whole. The end of the story is good just as the beginning of the story. And the question is, where do we find ourselves in that story? Yeah. And I think oftentimes we put ourselves in the place of Jesus, where we're the most important player in the story, that everybody else is playing a bit part in the story that we're telling, when really what we're called to do is be the followers of Jesus. We have an important role in the story. It's just not the most important role, right. But Jesus gives us good work to do. What that good work is, I think, is connected to your longing, your deep desire for creation and new creation. So where it is that in the beginning, like if you are a person who loves beauty and art and creativity, maybe your way to partner with the work of God, to follow up on the work of Jesus and to lean forward to new creation is to be an artist, to be somebody who's engaged in making the world more beautiful. Maybe you're a person who gets angry in the face of injustice, right. And maybe you need to be a lawyer or an advocate or a social worker. Whatever it is that you're doing, there is a way of thinking about it and framing that work up as partnering with the work of God. And this is part of what we're trying to cultivate for you over the course of this week. What are some of the ways in which you think about that? One of the ways I love about this section is that you put it in terms of what God longs for or loves or values. So what are some of those things?
Yeah. It's reminded me of a quote that we read about last week where Frederick Buechner says that your calling is the place where like your deep hunger meets the world's need. And the world has a lot of needs, and God desires to bring His goodness and His character and His love and His hope into all these places. And so sometimes I think the stories that we're going to read, we're going to remember about Micah and God's heart for justice and mercy and to walk humbly with Him, and how Nehemiah was so moved by the broken of the walls being knocked down and destroyed, that he begins the task of faithfully rebuilding. We're going to look at stories of people that pour into their art, into their wood making, into their creativity, and to do that in a way that honors the Lord. We're going to look at how Jesus notices and cares for the marginalized, his posture of seeing people who the world doesn't see, and even seeing people who are going to betray him. Looking at the story of the Last Supper, where he washes the disciples' feet, even Judas, that his compassion reaches that low, and so we're gonna look at these stories, but we also want you to reflect on your own story. Where does your heart break for the world? Where do you have longing? Where do you have creativity? And what does that look like in which you might partner? So for me, once I learned how to play the guitar, and I was leading worship, but also I started writing my own songs as a way to process the world around me and the experiences that were happening. So I can remember like 8th grade me sitting on the floor having this friendship kind of falling out that I felt was just so dramatic, and I wrote this song about it, and in a way I was offering it to the Lord, and a song came from it, and as life continued to unfold for me, songwriting has been this anchor that I've come back to and sometimes it's prayers of praying to the Lord and asking for His wisdom through way of song, and sometimes it's writing about stories. I've spent a lot of time in Africa. Part of my story was following the Lord to Africa and working at an orphanage there, and so part of my processing of that experience and to partner with the Lord was to tell their stories. But I wasn't as good at like public speaking. And so I wrote a lot of songs about it and made an album. And then I was able to fundraise for this orphanage and give back by way of art. And so I think I just want to challenge all of us to start where we are. We don't have to, necessarily pick up a new hobby or try something new. It's where are we already going, right? To be called is to practice as you go. As you go, carry love, carry God's character, carry hope to the world. And often that is in small acts of faithfulness.
Yeah, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for human masters. That's Colossians 3:23. It's kind of at the heart of this particular week. I want to just circle back around. That's kind of big picture and following the longing of your heart wherever that goes, and that will take you in a direction where you can partner with God. But we live our life in weeks. There's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then another Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so we all have that experience, I think, of feeling like Sunday went well, maybe Monday morning, but by Monday afternoon, things begin to hit the fan and things break down. And some of your desires may be coming out of your best intentions and hopes for yourself. You end up in a place where either you do something that you wish you hadn't done, or you don't do something that you should have done, and you feel like you're breaking down. Another thing that can happen is just compartmentalization. That was one of the things that I heard you say at the beginning. It's like, I am this person in this zone, I'm this person in this zone, and we compartmentalize our lives. And I was reminded of, there's a word in the introduction, integrity. And I was reminded of, I did a funeral for a man who was in his 70s, and the last word of the obituary that was written by his family who loved him, he was an attorney by training and trade, and they said his name, his birth date, a dash, and a death date, and the phrase at the end of it, there were all the accomplishments, and at the end it said, always a man of integrity. And I found myself thinking, like, that's really the journey that we're on, is to move from compartmentalization to integration of life, faith, and work and rest. And if you integrate things, the root of the word integration is the same root for integrity. It's being the same person in public and private, whether you're at work or at home, with your friends or your colleagues. The goal would be to get to become the kind of person who lives a life of integrity, where everything we do, in fact, is with all of our heart. And who we are in the grocery store is the same as who we are on the highway. And I fully admit that is an aspiration for me. It's not where I find myself today. But I take great heart and hope in who we are today. Is not the full picture. It's not the full story. And there's this great spiritual that says, nobody knows who I am until Judgment Day. And I take that to the bank. I'm waiting. The full picture of the story of my life can be told only at the end. And that's the case for you as well and all of us. And so if you long to become the kind of person who partners wholeheartedly with God, whatever it is that you do. If you want to become a man or a woman of integrity, this week is an opportunity. We're 4 weeks into this thing. Now's the time to actually dig into these questions and ask yourself some deeper questions about who you are and who you want to become. Katie has set the table beautifully for us. And I would encourage you to just really dig into these questions about how you show up for yourself and others. I love this quotation, Katie, that you offer from Mother Teresa as you close it out. Do you mind reading it?
Yeah. So God does not call us to be successful. He calls us to be faithful. This quote reminds me, I was kind of looking recently at Paul's life at the end when he's writing the letter to Timothy. And he says these his famous last words of, I fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. And I think, wow, at this point, he's not talking about his accolades or how many churches that he planted or the work in which, he has done within these churches and raising disciples, he, connects with his faith as something that he, in the end, is holding on to. Like, I have kept the faith. I've held on. I've been faithful. And often, faithfulness is seen in the small, unseen, ordinary moments, day after day after day, partnering with the Lord, seeking God, and following after him and loving people. And so I was just thinking, like, God calls us to be, he calls us to be faithful, to keep the faith. This world can make you lose faith really quickly, just turning on the news or listening to all these stories, it can make you lose heart. And so I was just thinking, to practice faith, to practice keeping the faith, it again takes intention, and it takes practice, and it takes showing up in these small ways. But the thing we know about any time of, like, when you're building or breaking a habit, or when you're trying to make progress in anything, it is the small little moments that make or break something that we're working towards. And so it's these small, ordinary moments that God calls us to be faithful in. And everybody, what the Lord calls you to be faithful in, yes, there's some, like, generic, he calls us to love God and love people. But what is he calling you to be faithful to? What is he calling me to be faithful to? And what does that mean in my present everyday life? What does that mean in your present everyday life?
Yeah, and I think one of my encouragements as we kind of close out this particular conversation is that it may not mean that you have to jump ship from your major, or now I need to go into vocational ministry or whatever that I hear some people sometimes say. Go do the thing that you're doing, whatever that is, and do it as unto the Lord. Do it wholeheartedly for Christ, as a way of partnering with the work of God that began in Jesus and that will end in new creation. And if you do that day after day, week after week, with this intention to become a person of integrity, where you're the same person in public and private, you're integrating your life and your faith and your work, it will be enough at the end of the day, because God's grace will be at work in it. We talked a lot about work today. Next week, we'll be talking about work and rest, an important dimension. We can't just grind all day, every day. So next week, we'll be talking about work and rest as we continue the journey together through this Bible reading plan. We're so glad that you're with us.